In the second month after I'd been pulled into this novel, I found a little girl on the street. She clung to me, insisting I was her mom, tugging at my sleeve and begging me to take her home. I was just about to bring her to the police station when, out of nowhere, translucent comment-like messages flickered into view in front of me. Oh my God, this poor baby, her mom died when she was just 1. She's basically never known a mother's love. You can't even blame her for getting it wrong. This random passerby looks way too much like the female lead. Too much. They're literally identical. Even the male lead would be freaked out if he saw her. Wait, am I the only one noticing this extra is about to get rich? The last person who found the girl and took her home got 2 houses from the male lead. What? 2 houses? I stopped in my tracks immediately. Then I crouched down, my face breaking into the warmest, sweetest smile I could manage. Hey there, sweetheart, I said gently. Where do you live? Welcome to Hehestory channel. Subscribe to follow all our latest adventures. Story begins. By the second month of being stuck inside this novel, I was still painfully broke. My rent was about to run out, and I didn't even have the faintest lead on my next job. Even the wind whipping across the river bridge couldn't blow away the air of poverty clinging to me. I shut my eyes and made a silent wish to get rich. Then someone tugged at the hem of my clothes. I looked down. A little girl, 5, maybe 6 years old, stood there. She wore a soft goose yellow knit cardigan over a white dress, with a pair of glossy Mary Jane shoes on her feet. She looked so delicate, so perfectly put together, like a doll displayed behind glass. For a moment, I just stared. The next second, she rushed forward and threw her arms around my leg, bursting into tears. Mommy! She tilted her face up at me, tears spilling down like broken strands of pearls. You finally came to pick me up. Mommy, Daddy, and I missed you so much. What? She clung to my leg, crying her heart out, and I had absolutely no experience dealing with children. I crouched down, awkward and at a loss. Hey, sweetie, did you maybe get the wrong person? She shook her head, her eyes red. I wouldn't get it wrong. You're my mommy. Do you not want me anymore? Is that why you're pretending you don't know me? I froze. Her voice grew smaller and smaller as she spoke, her eyes slowly reddening, round and glossy like glass beads filling up with water. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. When a child looks at you like that, even the hardest person in the world can't bring themselves to say something cruel. I stood up and searched every pocket on me. Empty. Unbelievable. Not only was I broke, I didn't even have a single tissue. Embarrassed, I crouched down again and wiped her tears with the back of my hand. Sweetheart, what's your name? She sniffled, her voice soft and milky. Jenna Tomlinson. Do you remember anyone's phone number at home? Maybe I can call them to come pick you up, okay? I pulled out my phone, about to unlock it. A small, chubby hand suddenly pressed against my forehead. Jenna tilted her head, looking at me with wide, puzzled eyes. Mommy, are you sick? Come home with me. Daddy will find someone to make you better. He has a lot of money. She grabbed my hand and started pulling me forward. Just as I was about to speak, a flood of dense, scrolling comments suddenly appeared before my eyes. Oh my God. This poor baby, her mom died when she was just 1. She's barely felt any motherly love. You can't blame her for getting it wrong. She's only 6. Besides, this random passerby looks just like the female lead. Just like. Are you kidding me? They're identical. Even the male lead would be shocked out of his mind. Wait, is no one else noticing this extra is about to get rich? The last person who found the girl and took her home got 2 houses from the male lead. Hold on. Did something shiny just float past? I stared harder at the comments, and it finally clicked. The little girl in front of me was the daughter of this novel's male and female leads. The female lead had died 5 years ago. And I just happened to look exactly like her. No wonder the kid got it wrong. But that wasn't the important part. The important part was, if I brought her home, I'd get 2 houses. 2 houses. My brain stopped functioning entirely, because it had already been completely occupied by the image of 2 houses. I bent down, putting on the gentlest, most radiant smile I could muster. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "where do you live?" You can't hail a cab on the bridge, so I walked hand in hand with Jenna all the way down to the base. I had just raised my hand to flag a taxi when suddenly, 7 or 8 men in black suits surrounded us, politely inviting us into a car. That's when I realized she might have looked like she was wandering the bridge alone, but in reality, she was being watched by a whole team of bodyguards. If I'd had even the slightest bad intention, I'd probably already be halfway across the river Styx by now. The car drove for quite a while before finally coming to a stop. Jenna immediately pushed the door open. "Mommy, we're home. Come on, get out." It was a hillside villa. Beautiful scenery, a sweeping view. All the noise of the city was sealed away at the foot of the mountain, leaving only the sound of wind, water, and the soft glow of lights flickering on in the dusk. I couldn't help but think, people who live in places like this probably do give away 2 houses like it's nothing. Jenna tugged me up to the front door and quickly keyed in the passcode. The door had barely opened when a woman in her 50s hurried out, still wearing an apron. "Miss, you're back already? Why so early?" She stopped mid-sentence the moment our eyes met. Her eyes widened, her mouth slightly open, and her vision instantly blurred with tears. "Ma'am." Jenna had already run over and grabbed her hand, looking up proudly. "Aunt Maria, see? I told you I could find Mommy." Aunt Maria stared at me without blinking, her lips trembling before she finally managed to speak. How is this possible? "Ma'am, you." I quickly waved my hands. "There's been a misunderstanding. I'm just a passerby. I brought her back because I didn't feel comfortable leaving her alone." Aunt Maria seemed to come back to herself. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve and gave me a gentle smile. Then she crouched down, looking at Jenna with deep affection. "Miss, why don't you go upstairs and change? Your dress is all dirty." Jenna instinctively looked at me, her eyes filled with unease. "Will Mommy wait for me?" I held out my hand and hooked my pinky with hers. "I promise I won't leave, okay?" She pressed her lips together and hooked her pinky with mine very seriously, then let the maid lead her upstairs, looking back every few steps. Aunt Maria guided me to the sofa and poured me a glass of water. "What should I call you?" "Jane Baker," I replied softly. She froze for a moment, and her eyes welled up again. "Miss Baker, please don't mind me. You really look too much like Madam." Not just your face, your voice, even your name. I was stunned too. What kind of coincidence was this? Our Madam was named Jane Peterson. She was a very, very good person. It's just such a pity she passed away so young. I hesitated. "How did she die?" Aunt Maria's voice turned hoarse, though still gentle. 5 years ago, on Christmas, Sir was overseas on business, and Madam took Miss to go see him. There was a car accident on the way to the airport. Only Miss was saved. Madam, Aunt Maria wiped her tears and continued. After that, Sir changed completely. He never smiled again. Miss was only 1 back then. She didn't understand anything. Sir has been raising her alone all these years. I don't know what happened, but starting last month, she suddenly insisted on finding her mother. Every Wednesday, she goes to the bridge, saying Mommy will be there waiting for her. I froze. What? Aunt Maria sighed. She says her mother told her. One day she sneaked out by herself. We were terrified. Luckily she remembered the phone number, and a kind stranger contacted Sir. When she came back, Sir asked why she ran away. She said she dreamed of her mother, who told her to wait on the bridge every Wednesday. From that day on, Sir has accompanied her there every Wednesday, rain or shine. They stay until midnight, until she falls asleep, before coming home. Today Sir had work, so the bodyguards took her instead. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but nothing came out. Miss Baker, Aunt Maria suddenly said, looking at me earnestly, I know you're not, madam, but Miss hasn't been this happy in a very long time. Could you stay for dinner? Spend a little more time with her? I nodded. Of course. Aunt Maria clasped my hands gratefully. Then please, make yourself comfortable. I'll go prepare a couple more dishes. After Aunt Maria went into the kitchen and Jenna still hadn't come downstairs, I wandered around the living room on my own. It didn't take long before something caught my attention. Along the side of the staircase stretched an entire wall of photographs, frames of all shapes and sizes arranged in a careful, almost artistic scatter. Warm, golden spotlights shone down on each one, like a miniature family gallery. I stepped closer, looking at them one by one. They were all photos of Jenna Tomlinson. From the day she was born, every milestone of her life had been preserved on that wall. Her entire childhood mapped out in images. I lingered a moment longer, and then something struck me as strange. Hundreds of photos filled that wall. Even Aunt Maria appeared in many of them. But the man and woman who owned this house, not a single picture of them. At some point, the floating comments drifted back into view. God, this wall makes me feel awful. The male lead packed away everything related to the female lead. Not because he forgot, but because he can't face it. How could he? Every time he sees her alive in those photos, he's reminded of her lifeless eyes when she died. Just looking is a kind of slow torture. They were supposed to spend Christmas together in New York, but what he got instead was the news of her death. I can't even imagine how he must have felt when he got that call. No one could take that. Stop it, you guys. Say one more word, and I'm sending a van after you. I was still lost in thought when the sound of a car engine came from outside. The comments exploded in an instant. HHH, the male lead is back. Are they finally meeting? I'm dying to see his reaction. Even Aunt Maria mistook her at first, and she knows the female lead better than anyone except him. Do you think he'll make her a substitute for the female lead? Please don't. That kind of replacement trope is disgusting. No respect for anyone involved. Maybe. But people who are still alive need something to hold on to. Yes. Give me the drama. The substitute. The forced love. Bring it on. I didn't know if it was the comments getting to me, but suddenly I felt nervous. My heart was pounding like crazy. The sound of the lock turning snapped me back. I turned toward the door. The next second, it opened. A tall figure stepped in from the shadows. He wore a dark gray suit. His features were sharp, his expression edged with exhaustion and cold restraint. His gaze swept briefly across the empty living room, then settled on my face. None of the complicated emotions the comments had predicted. Not even the slightest hint of surprise. Just a distant, indifferent Miss Baker. Clearly, the bodyguards who had been shadowing Jenna weren't useless. What happened on the bridge must have already been reported to him. At this point, he probably knew not just my basic information, but my entire family tree. I offered a polite, measured smile. Mr. Tomlinson. Nice to meet you. Marcus Tomlinson walked over and sat across from me, his long fingers undoing the buttons of his suit jacket. The gesture was casual, but the pressure he carried with him wasn't. Please have a seat, Miss Baker. The comments started floating again. Wow, he's so cold. I got my hopes up for nothing. Of course he is. In the past 5 years, how many women have tried to get close to him? Some even got plastic surgery, all dreaming of becoming Mrs. Tomlinson. Someone who looks exactly like his late wife suddenly appearing? Of course he'd suspect her motives. Honestly, it is a little too coincidental. Same face, same day, same bridge. So many people want to replace her, but no one knows she's irreplaceable in his heart. Miss Baker, Thank you for bringing my daughter home today. Marcus's voice was low and steady, carrying a quiet authority that didn't invite argument. She's still young. Sometimes she mistakes people. I'm sorry for the trouble. I smiled. Genuinely this time. It wasn't trouble at all. She's adorable. He lifted his eyes, his gaze brushing over my face, detached, emotionless. Where do you live, Miss Baker? I'll have my driver take you home. As compensation for your time today, I've prepared a small gift. Please accept it. My heart practically exploded. This was it. The moment. I could practically see 2 houses waving at me in the distance. I wanted to jump up and scream on the spot. My poor, empty wallet. Your salvation is near. I forced down the grin threatening to break across my face, doing my best to sound calm. Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. I had just stood up when a series of rapid footsteps echoed from the staircase. Jenna came running down, now dressed in a pink dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She ran straight into Marcus's arms. Daddy, you're back. The man who had been all cold edges just moments ago softened instantly. Even his voice gentled. Miss Baker is leaving. Go say goodbye. The smile on Jenna's face froze. She stared at him for a long moment, then spoke, her voice quiet, but unwavering. She's not Miss Baker. She's my mommy. Marcus frowned slightly. Jenna. She is my mommy. Her voice rose suddenly. She ran to my side, her small hand clutching tightly at the hem of my clothes, as if I might disappear the moment she let go. Daddy, why won't you recognize Mommy? Do you not want her to come back? Marcus's frown deepened. He stood, reaching to pull Jenna away from me. Jenna, stop this. She shook her head desperately, tears streaming down her face in heavy drops. Though she was only 6, every word came out clear and sharp. You're the one making a fuss. Mommy is right in front of you. Why won't you look at her? Why are you trying to send her away? Don't you love Mommy anymore? I don't like you anymore. Marcus's hand froze midair. His lips pressed into a tight line, and for a split second, something like pain flickered in his eyes. Aunt Maria had come out at some point, standing off to the side, quietly wiping her tears. The atmosphere tightened. I looked at Marcus, then at Jenna. After a moment's thought, I reached out and gently covered Jenna's ears, lowering my voice. Mr. Tomlinson, how about I stay until she falls asleep? Don't worry. I'll leave after that. His gaze dropped to my hand. After a brief silence, his tone softened slightly. Miss Baker, if you don't mind, you may stay the night. I'll have a driver take you home tomorrow. I nodded quickly. Of course. Jenna was still sniffling softly. I crouched down and wiped her tears. All right, if you keep crying, you'll turn into a little kitty. She stared at me with red, watery eyes, like a wronged little rabbit. Then will Mommy sneak away? Of course not. We pinky promised, remember? She sniffed, her voice barely above a whisper. Then, will you sleep with me tonight? I instinctively glanced at Marcus, but he was looking down, lost in thought. So I turned to Aunt Maria instead. She smiled and gave me a small nod. Okay. At last, Jenna smiled. She took my hand and led me toward the dining table. Mommy, let's eat. Children's emotions come quickly, and they pass just as fast. After dinner, we played for a while, and before long Jenna Tomlinson was happily tugging me off to bed. She curled up against me like a kitten, her eyes drifting shut, then fluttering open again. After a moment, she edged closer and whispered by my ear. Mommy, did you come back from heaven? I froze. She kept going in that small, careful voice. Daddy said you went to heaven. He said it would be a very, very long time before we could see you again. She lifted her face and looked at me with bright, shining eyes. Now that you've come back, are you going to leave again? I parted my lips, but I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't her mother. Sooner or later, I was going to leave. But I couldn't say that to her. Some truths can be spoken plainly to adults. In front of a child, though, they become unbearable. Jenna waited for a while. When no answer came, she burrowed deeper into my arms and murmured softly, "It's okay if Mommy doesn't say anything. That's okay. I'll be good. I'll be really good. If I listen, Mommy won't leave." I blinked, and that same sour ache rose in my chest for no reason at all. In the end, I reached for the storybook lying nearby. "How about a story?" I said softly. I patted her back as I read in a low voice, turning each line into something gentle and dreamy. Before long, her breathing evened out in my arms. Jenna Tomlinson had fallen asleep. I turned my head and looked at her face in the moonlight spilling through the window. Tiny brows, tiny nose, tiny mouth. Even in sleep, the corners of her lips curved faintly upward, as if she were dreaming something beautiful. Her mother was probably in that dream. I sighed and tucked the blanket more snugly around her, then slipped quietly out of the room. The lights had already been turned off outside. The whole house was dark. Only one floor lamp in the living room was still on. Its warm amber glow lit up just a small patch of space, like a lonely circle of light. Marcus Tomlinson sat back on the sofa with his eyes closed, a faint crease between his brows. A bottle of liquor stood open in front of him, less than half of it left. Gone was the hard, cold edge he'd worn when I first met him. At that moment, there was even something fragile about him. The floating comments surfaced again, silent as ghosts. The male lead is drinking by himself. My heart hurts for him. Is he like this every night? Waiting until his daughter's asleep, then drinking alone until midnight? The book mentioned that after the female lead died, he drank heavily for a while. Later he quit for his daughter's sake, but he still drinks once in a while. He must be in so much pain. Being asked by his own daughter whether he doesn't love the female lead anymore, that's basically a knife to the heart. How could he not love her? No one in this world loved her more than he did. There are things adults understand, but she's still so little. She just misses her mom. I had only come out to get a glass of water, but now I felt awkwardly trapped. I didn't want to disturb him. While I was still hesitating, Marcus Tomlinson suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze landed directly on me, slowed slightly by the haze of alcohol. For one brief moment, he seemed to go still, motionless, unfocused. Then his throat bobbed, and something fierce rolled through his eyes. Slowly, he rose to his feet. "Mr. Tomlinson," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the stillness of midnight, it carried clearly enough. It was like someone had pressed pause on him. He stopped where he was, and the storm in his eyes began to recede little by little. His focus returned. His gaze settled on my face again, sharp and sober. "Is she asleep?" "She is." Marcus sat back down, lowered his eyes, and picked up his glass again. The amber liquid caught the light along the crystal, glowing softly. Outside, the mountain wind moved through the treetops with a rustling sigh, faint and distant, like grief too worn out to make a sound. The next morning, after breakfast, Marcus Tomlinson and I took Jenna Tomlinson to kindergarten together. She was happy the entire ride. She looked out the left window, then the right, then finally decided to lean her head against my arm. The three of them going to school together like a family. This is too beautiful. If the female lead hadn't died, their little girl would have been so happy. I wish this passerby really were the female lead. I want them to have a happy ending so bad. By the time the car pulled up in front of the kindergarten, plenty of other parents were already dropping off their children. But Jenna refused to get out right away. She looked at me with wide, pleading eyes. "Mommy, will you come pick me up after school today?" Marcus tilted his head slightly and lifted the strap of her backpack back onto her shoulder. Kids who are late don't get red flowers. Jenna pressed her lips together and climbed out obediently. Before leaving, She leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. "Mommy, I'll wait for you." Only after Jenna had disappeared through the school gates did the car remain still instead of driving off at once. Marcus watched the window for a while before finally drawing his gaze back. "Miss Baker, there's something I'd like to discuss with you." He took a document out of his briefcase. I accepted it and opened it, only to realize it was a private caregiver contract. It stated very clearly that my only duty was to take care of Jenna Tomlinson. Nothing else. 10 million a year. Room and board included. A personal driver for transportation. Full medical coverage. My eyelid twitched. No clocking in. No miserable early mornings. No cramming onto the subway. No dealing with brain-dead bosses. And I'd get to live in a luxury villa? Dear God. This wasn't a private caregiver position. This was a golden rice bowl dropped straight from heaven. I looked up, my eyes suddenly full of conviction. "Mr. Tomlinson, I will take very good care of Jenna." Marcus's expression didn't change in the slightest. He handed me a black fountain pen. "Just sign." I took the pen, flipped to the last page, and signed my name neatly on the line for Party B. The comments started racing wildly across my vision. "He's so clear-headed. He has absolutely no intention of treating her like a substitute for the female lead. More than anyone, he knows Jane Peterson is gone. He doesn't need a replacement. He needs someone who can make his daughter happy. There's a world of difference between being a stand-in and being hired. That kind of clarity is the cruelest part, isn't it? She looks so much like her. Even their names are similar, but he knows she isn't her." I handed the signed contract back to him. Marcus lowered his eyes to it, then paused. His gaze stayed fixed on the line where I had signed my name. At first I thought I'd written something wrong, so I straightened and leaned over for a look. The handwriting was a little ugly, sure, but it definitely said Jane Baker. No mistake there. Then I glanced at the comments again, and, as expected, found the answer. Wait, what's this extras deal? Even her handwriting habits are the same as the female leads. That ultra-elementary school handwriting, seriously, you don't see that much anymore. She's not actually the female lead, is she? Honestly, I support that theory. I was starting to wonder too. Could there really be that many coincidences? My head itched. It felt like maybe, just maybe, I was about to grow a brain. Days passed like this, one after another. Before I knew it, life in the Tomlinson household had settled into a rhythm. Every morning, I took Jenna Tomlinson to kindergarten. In the afternoon, I picked her up, stayed with her through dinner, played with her, told her stories, and tucked her into bed. During the day, while she was at school, I stayed at the villa, helping Aunt Maria tend to the garden, or occasionally going out shopping. Although the contract I'd signed said an annual salary of 10 million, in reality, 1 million showed up in my account like clockwork every single month. I had gone from broke to rich overnight. The kind of rich you can't even hide. I checked my bank balance 800 times a day. Every time I went out, I came back loaded with bags, buying gifts for everyone. Even the goldfish in the backyard pond didn't get left out. The comments were lively as ever. Jane Baker treats the kids so well. Every time she buys something, the first person she thinks of is Jenna. And she buys a ton. Wait, am I the only one noticing she's never bought anything for the male lead? Now that you mention it, yeah, never. LMAO. He doesn't deserve it. It was true. I had never bought Marcus Tomlinson a gift. Not because I forgot, and definitely not because I was stingy. It was because I had no idea what might set off a landmine. There was one time he got sick and stayed home. I happened to be cutting fruit, so I brought him a plate as well. He had been working in his study. His eyes flicked over the fruit plate, and when he looked back up, his gaze was ice cold. Don't do unnecessary things. Later, I learned from the comments that even the way I slice strawberries happened to match how the female lead used to do it. Combined with all the other coincidences, He probably thought I was deliberately imitating Jane Peterson to get close to him. Even I didn't understand why so many ridiculous coincidences kept happening. But there was no way I was losing a job this easy and this well paid. So after that, I made a point to avoid crossing paths with him whenever possible. What I didn't expect, though, was that even Jenna had noticed something this subtle. That night, she tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Then suddenly, she sat up and looked at me with a serious expression. "Mommy, do you not like Daddy?" I was in the middle of telling her a story. The question hit me out of nowhere. "What? You bought Aunt Maria a scarf, Uncle Zhang a cushion, Uncle Aching sunglasses, and even bought plants for the goldfish." She counted on her fingers one by one. "But you didn't buy anything for Daddy." I opened my mouth, but for a moment, I couldn't find any words. "So, Mommy doesn't like Daddy?" she asked again, the light in her eyes dimming just a little. I scratched my head. "I just don't know what to buy him." Jenna tilted her head, thinking for a moment. Then she suddenly smiled. "I know what Daddy likes." "What?" "He likes Mommy." On Wednesday after school, Jenna suddenly insisted on going to a hot spring. Xinshin's parents took her last weekend. She brought pictures to show us. It looked so fun. "Mommy, can we go this week too?" She was asking me, but I had absolutely no authority to decide something like that. I lowered my head, pretending to be very busy. I could feel Marcus Tomlinson's gaze linger on me for a moment, then shift away. "I'll have my assistant arrange it." His assistant worked fast. By the next morning, the itinerary had been sent over. A hot spring resort in a nearby city. We would leave Friday afternoon and return after lunch on Sunday. This time, there was no driver. Marcus drove. It was a 3-hour trip. Jenna slept for 2 of them. I looked down at her, smoothing her wind-tousled hair, my hand naturally coming to rest on her forehead. Normal temperature, no fever. It was something I did every day now. Once in the morning, once before bed. It had become a habit. Marcus watched the scene through the rear-view mirror, but said nothing. Jenna didn't get to travel far very often, so everything fascinated her. She chattered the entire way. By dinner time, she came up with a new request. "Mommy, I want to sleep with Daddy tonight." I didn't think much of it and nodded automatically. Then she added, "Mommy too. We can all sleep together. Daddy's bed is big." I choked on my waters so hard I almost died. I didn't even dare look at Marcus. I was terrified he'd think I had ulterior motives. I think I'll pass." "Why?" She lowered her head, pouting. But when Xinshin goes to hot springs, she always sleeps with her mom and dad. The comments exploded again. "Elmio, this kid already knows how to manipulate adults. This is so wholesome though. It's totally giving family of 3 vibes. She hasn't been this happy in so long. Before it was just her dad, now she finally has a mom. Even if it's not real, she really treats Jane Baker like her mother. Jane Baker is just as kind as the female lead. She's always so patient and gentle with the kid. Honestly, I'm convinced Jane Baker is the female lead. She's been revived. That's it. Doesn't matter if she is or not. I support anyone who loves this kid. In the end, I couldn't win against her. The 3 of us ended up sharing one room. Thankfully, the bed was big enough. Jenna slept in the middle, with Marcus and me lying on either side, fully clothed. It wasn't cramped. The room was quiet, filled only with Jenna's steady breathing. I lay stiff as a board, completely unable to sleep, so I glanced at the floating comments. He's probably remembering the first time he stayed overnight somewhere with the female lead. They were still in college back then. So innocent. He was such a tsundere. Obviously already in love, but still acting all cold. If he'd known she'd leave him so soon, he would have accepted her confession earlier. I stared at the ceiling, my soul practically leaving my body. Seriously? Even sleeping can trigger flashbacks. My million-a-month job. Why does it feel like it's constantly under threat? No. I had to do something. Mr. Tomlinson. KMM. Have you been somewhere like this before? With Jane Peterson? The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. That was not my place to ask. Damn it. I wish I could take that back. Marcus was silent for a long time. So long I thought he wouldn't answer. I have. She liked hot springs. Said they were good for your skin. I blinked. Really? At the mention of Jane Peterson, his voice softened just slightly. I don't know. But if she said so, it was probably true. She even bought a device to measure skin moisture. Only used it twice before tossing it aside. Listening to those few simple sentences, I suddenly understood why the comments pitted him so much. He must miss her. Even if he was always guarded around me, when it came to Jane Peterson, he was willing to say a little more. But unlike Jenna, who wore her emotions openly, his longing as an adult could only exist in silence. I sighed quietly, my voice softer than before. She was a good person, wasn't she? That's why you both remember her so clearly. Marcus didn't answer. I closed my eyes. Don't worry. I'll remember her too. Maybe it was the little speech I gave that night, pledging my sincerity. But over the next 2 days, Marcus Tomlinson's attitude toward me softened. Just a little. At breakfast the next morning, I couldn't reach the small dish of pickles in the middle of the table. Without a word, he slid it over within my reach. It was something small, almost insignificant, but it felt like he didn't dislike me as much anymore. At the very least, he seemed to believe I wasn't someone with ulterior motives. I let out a quiet breath of relief. My million-a-month job had survived. God, that hadn't been easy. On the day we were heading back, Marcus had a last-minute meeting. I took Jenna around the resort for a bit before we planned to meet him at the restaurant. As we were crossing the street, I noticed an elderly man on the other side selling balloons, bright, colorful ones swaying gently in the breeze. Jenna's eyes lit up. Mommy, I want the pink one. I pinched her cheek lightly. Okay. Count to 10, and the light will turn green. She nodded obediently and began counting, 1 through 10. Right on cue, the red light switched to green. I took her hand and started across. We had just reached the middle of the crosswalk when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a silver-gray car. It was moving too fast. So fast I didn't even have time to think. But my body reacted faster than my mind. I shoved Jenna away with all my strength and turned my back toward the oncoming car. As I fell, I heard a burst of chaotic screams. I wanted to check if Jenna was okay, but I couldn't open my eyes. Even the floating comments were gone. The darkness was too thick, heavy as ink. It swallowed me whole, dragging me down, deeper and deeper. I didn't know how long I fell, until suddenly, light. In an instant, countless images flooded in all at once. I saw a baby, tiny, wrinkled, wrapped in a white blanket. It's a girl, 6 pounds, 8 ounces, healthy. The scene shifted to outside a delivery room. A tall man stood there, his hair slightly disheveled, his suit creased. A nurse urged him to hold the baby, but he only asked anxiously, "How is my wife?" I recognized him. Marcus Tomlinson. A younger Marcus Tomlinson. The images shattered and reformed, flashing one after another before my eyes. In just a few minutes, more than 20 years passed like running water. Then, suddenly, a familiar electronic voice sounded in my ear. "Host. Long time no see." I remembered everything. I wasn't some random extra who had fallen into a novel. I wasn't Jane Baker. I was Jane Peterson, Marcus Tomlinson's wife, Jenna Tomlinson's mother. One day in college, completely by chance, I had been bound to a redemption system. Its mission was simple: Redeem Marcus Tomlinson. I didn't understand it at all. Compared to someone like Marcus, born with a silver spoon, shouldn't I, a broke nobody, be the one needing redemption? But I accepted anyway. The reward was too generous to refuse. Marcus Tomlinson was difficult. For the first 3 months, I made zero progress. No matter what I did, he remained unmoved. The word he used most often toward me was, "Get lost." But for that reward, there was no way I was leaving. The turning point came on his birthday. I had brought a cake, hoping to surprise him. When I found him, he was sitting alone on the rooftop. His phone lay beside him, on speaker. And those vicious words drifted into my ears with the wind. Why are you the one who lived? It should have been you who died. I should never have given birth to you. I should have strangled you back then. Why don't you just die already? The system told me the voice on the other end belonged to his mother. Before marrying into the Tomlinson family, she had already had a lover and a son. But the Tomlinsons had torn them apart for the sake of an arranged marriage, forcing her to marry Marcus's father. She gave birth to Marcus while still longing for another man. On Marcus's 5th birthday, his mother took him and his half-brother out. There was a car accident. The brother died on the spot. Marcus survived. From that moment on, his birthday stopped being a birthday. Every year, on that day, his mother would call him and curse him with the most vicious words imaginable. He would just listen, never responding, never hanging up. That day, the wind on the rooftop was fierce. The boy stood there in silence, his figure swallowed by shadows, like a lonely island. The system told me to go comfort him. But I knew that in the face of grief like that, words meant nothing. Like tossing a pebble into the ocean, no ripple, no trace. So I walked up behind him and covered his ears with my hands. Don't listen. After that day, he was still cold to me. But he never told me to get lost again. Another month passed. One day, I was working a part-time job when a sudden downpour shut down the buses. I was soaked through when a car stopped in front of me. Marcus stepped out, his expression dark, and dragged me into the car. Then he booked a room at a hotel. That night, we lay stiffly on opposite sides of the bed like two mummies. I tried to make conversation out of sheer awkwardness. Every time, his reply was just 2 words. Be quiet. After that, everything unfolded naturally. We got together. Not long after graduation, we got married. In our 3rd year of marriage, I gave birth to a daughter. We named her Jenna Tomlinson. On Christmas, the year she turned 1, I took her to New York to find Marcus. On the way, the accident. That time, neither Jenna nor I should have survived. But the system, long dormant, activated at the last moment. Using all its remaining energy, it could only save one of us. I chose Jenna. Even knowing how devastating my death would be for Marcus, I couldn't escape the instinct of a mother. And then, I fell into an endless, boundless darkness. So when the system's voice sounded again, it felt almost comforting. What happened? The system replied, its voice mechanical as ever. 5 years ago, I exhausted all my energy. I could only activate an emergency preservation protocol and temporarily seal your consciousness. It took 5 years to accumulate enough energy to reconstruct your body. However, the consumption was too great. Your memories could not be restored at the same time. So it was the system that saved me. Then, the dream Jenna had. That was you too? Yes. Without your memories, you couldn't find them. So I had to guide her to find you instead. I was worried she wouldn't recognize you. But perhaps this is the bond between mother and daughter. I paused. What do you mean? After your death, Marcus Tomlinson put away everything related to you. In truth, your daughter has never seen your face. But the moment she saw you, she recognized you. I went still. Every time Jenna had said, with absolute certainty, that I was her mother. Everyone assumed she was mistaken because of how I looked. No one knew. She had truly recognized me. Even without my memories, she knew. I was her mother. Then, does that mean I've died again? No. Your physical condition is stable. You may wake at any time. My vision blurred instantly. My throat tightened. Thank you, system. You are welcome, host. Entering sleep mode. I wish you happiness. I slowly opened my eyes. White ceiling. Harsh lights. The sharp, sterile smell of disinfectant. I was lying in a hospital bed, every inch of my body aching. Mommy. Jenna Tomlinson was leaning over the bedside, her eyes red and swollen, her face streaked with tears. Her small hand clutched tightly around my fingers. Mommy, you're awake. You're finally awake. She was crying so hard, she could barely breathe, burying her face into my palm. I thought you were going to leave again. I thought you didn't want me anymore. My eyes burned. I wanted to say Mommy won't leave, but my throat was dry like sandpaper. I couldn't force out a single sound. All I could do was tighten my grip around her hand. And then, I saw Marcus Tomlinson standing at the foot of the bed. He was still wearing the same suit from that day, now wrinkled beyond recognition. Stubble shadowed his jaw. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes, like he hadn't rested in days. When he saw me awake, something in him seemed to loosen. He was about to speak. I smiled at him first, and mouthed his name. Marcus. He froze where he stood, as if something had locked him in place. Then his pupils trembled. The dull gray in his eyes came back to life, little by little, like something stirring beneath ice, like a hidden current breaking through 5 years of frozen stillness from the inside out. He walked to my side and leaned closer. I saw his lips trembling, his hands trembling. Jane. Jane Peterson. I reached out and touched his hair, still just as soft. I smiled. When did you lose so much weight? You don't even have that Mr. Tomlinson presence anymore. He didn't answer. He simply lowered his head into my palm, his shoulders shaking. Warm drops slipped into my hand, one after another, like a rainstorm that had been 5 years overdue. After my memories returned, Marcus Tomlinson barely left my side. From the hospital room to home, he followed me everywhere. He stopped going to the company altogether. Even when he was listening to work reports, his eyes stayed fixed on me. The moment I stood up, he would ask, "Where are you going?" I was completely out of options. "Mr. Tomlinson, do I need to report to you just to go to the bathroom?" He didn't answer. He just looked at me with that restless, uneasy gaze. And just like that, my heart softened again. So I leaned in and kissed him. At night, we lay in bed together. He held me from behind, his head resting in the curve of my shoulder. "Marcus, you should go to the company tomorrow." "I'm not going." "You haven't been in a week." "They can handle it. You're the boss. So I don't have to go." I sighed, turning over to face him, wrapping my arms around him. "I'm back. I'm really back. I won't leave again." For a long time, he didn't speak. He just held me tighter and tighter. Then, his voice came, slightly hoarse. "For a long time after you left, I kept dreaming. Sometimes you were sitting at the vanity, sometimes lying in bed reading, sometimes standing on the balcony, feeling the wind. At the end of every dream, you'd turn around, look at me, and tell me you were back. And then I'd wake up, and you were gone." It felt like my heart had been clenched in someone's fist. I ran my fingers through his hair, from root to tip, again and again, like soothing a frightened animal. There are a lot of coincidences in this world. Same face, same name, same habits. But I always knew they weren't you. Sometimes I hate how clear-headed I am. I can always tell at a glance. But how could I not be? I would never betray you. I will only ever love you. His voice was soft, but it landed on my heart with unbearable weight. I thought of what Aunt Maria and the comments had said. I didn't dare imagine how he had endured these past 5 years. Tears slipped down before I could stop them. All I could do was hold him tighter. Marcus Tomlinson, I won't make you wait anymore. Warmth trailed down my neck, dissolving into soft, lingering kisses that spread across my skin. His hand pressed against my waist, his fingers tightening slightly, as if he wanted to carve me into his bones. To make sure, again and again. Jane Peterson. I'm here. Outside the window, the mountain wind had long since stilled. Even the insects had gone quiet. The night shifted from deep black to dark blue, then from dark blue to pale gray. In the distance, the city lights flickered on one by one, like fallen stars scattered across the earth. The fog of night lifted, light returned, and those who had once been separated found their way back to each other. The end.
Thanks for stopping by. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos.